الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله أشهد أن محمدًا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح حي على الفلاح الله أكبر الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله
الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له وأشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له وأشهد أن محمدا عبد الله ورسوله صلى الله تعالى عليه وعلى آله وصحبه وسلم تسليما كثيرا أما بعد فإن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل محدثة بدعة وكل بدعة ضلالة وكل ضلالة في النار أما بعد فيقول شيخ الإسلام ابن تيمية رحمه الله تعالى قال بعض السلف منهم سعيد بن جبير إن العبد ليعمل الحسنة فيدخل بها النار وإن العبد ليعمل السيئة فيدخل بها الجنة يعمل الحسنة فيعجب بها ويفتخر منها حتى يدخل النار ويعمل السيئة فلا يزال خوفه منها وتوبته منها حتى تدخله الجنة. With regards to the completion of the sacred and holy month of Ramadan, and the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam's statement, من صام رمضان ثم أتبعه ستا من شوال كان كصيام الدهر. As Abu Ayyub al-Ansari radiallahu anhu has narrated in Sahih Muslim, the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says, whoever fasts the month of Ramadan and then follows up the month of Ramadan with 6 additional days of Shawwal, this Muslim, he or she shall receive the reward of an entire year, Siyam al-Dahr, all time, that the Prophet ﷺ forbade. The Prophet did not allow a Muslim to fast every single day without a break. But whoever completes the month of Ramadan successfully, and then decides and chooses to continue his spiritual journey in his consciousness of fasting 6 additional days back to back, inshallah, he will receive the reward of an entire year. So coming out of Ramadan, no doubt you're at a spiritual height. You're feeling good. 29 days, 30 days, you fasted, you were thirsty, you were hungry, you were tired, you were exhausted, you worked. The dunya did not stop during Ramadan. A few of us, a few of you may be fortunate enough to take off the entire month, to be wealthy, to have an extremely flexible job, an extremely understanding occupation in which you can take off. But most of us have to work during Ramadan. So bills are paid when you're tired, thirsty, and hungry. You have to get up, you have to take care of your kids, you have to hustle and bustle, nothing stops. So you finish the entire month. That's a major accomplishment, it's a major feat. You feel good, you feel well, you feel strong, you're on a spiritual high. And then you continue that journey by making 6 out of Shawwal, so you're feeling even better now. So the greater that you feel, the higher that you feel, the stronger that you feel, the more confident that you feel, the more dangerous it has now become for you. It's dangerous now. And that is because you may revert back to your human nature. And that's the nature of pride, a nature of arrogance, and a nature of feeling that I got it. I'm in control. This is easy. This is simple. And you may lose sight of the reality that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who inspires, and He is the one who allows you to physically perform. Nothing else. Allah gives you the thought, the idea of doing well, doing good. And Allah is the only one who can give you the physical strength and stamina to do well and to do good. And the moment you lose focus, and the moment you lose sight of these 2 guiding principles, you slip. And trust me, brothers and sisters in our Islam, it's extremely easy to slip. I'm telling you, from the driver's seat, talking, speaking, lecturing, you've memorized it, you've spoken this before, it's simple, it's easy, it's a basic question. You start thinking that you're in control, and you may lose, and you may miss out on the reality that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the one who inspires me, and He is the one who physically allows me to do the act. So what's the point, brothers and sisters in our Islam? After Ramadan, then Shawwal, it's easy for you to think that you're in control. And it's easy for you to think that the ibadah is simple and easy. And it's easy for you to think that you don't need Allah's mercy and grace to perform the ibadah. And this is why Shaykh al-Islam ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah said, quoting from our predecessors, the earliest Muslims, the purest, strongest, most knowledgeable and learned Muslims, they would say, and from them was Sa'id ibn Jubayr, the Abyssinian disciple of Abdullah ibn Abbas. He came from a lineage of slaves. And he was from the strongest and from the greatest of the Tabi'een. Sa'id ibn Jubayr, he said, إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَعْمَلُ الْحَسَنَةَ فَيَدْخُلُ بِهَا النَّارِ. He says that a servant, a Muslim, a believing slave, he may do a good deed. He may perform an act of righteousness and then go to hell. How paradoxical and phenomenal is that? Making prayer and entering the fire. Fasting Ramadan and going to the fire. Fasting Shawwal and being burnt and tortured and tormented in the fire. How can this be? وَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَعْمَلُ السَّيِّئَةَ فَيَدْخُلُ بِهَا الْجَنَّةِ. And another servant, another Muslim may drink alcohol, may fornicate, may commit murder, may disrespect his parents, may turn his back on the battlefield, etc. He doesn't say yeah, and he goes to paradise. He goes to Jannah by disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. How can this be? How is it possible for someone to obey Allah and then go to hell? And how is it possible for a servant to disobey Allah and go to paradise? Sa'id ibn Jubayr rahimahullah and others, they said, يَعْمَلُ الْحَسَنَةَ فَيَعْجَبُ بِهَا, is that he performs a good deed and then he becomes swollen, he becomes inflated, he becomes full of himself, he becomes arrogant, he becomes conceited. He starts to think and to feel and to believe that he did it because of his own knowledge or strength or wealth or clout. And he goes to hell. يَعْمَلُ الْحَسَنَةَ فَيَعْجَبُ بِهَا وَيَفْتَخِرُ بِهَا. He looks at the people, he looks down upon the people that they owe him something, and that he's better than them, and that he's superior to them. And he becomes full of pride and arrogance, and that is the reason behind him going to the fire of hell. And the second servant, the other slave, the other Muslim man or woman, male or female, they do the sayyah. They disobey Allah. They make a sin, they make a mistake. فَلَا يَزَالُ خَوْفُهُ مِنْهَا. But that Muslim is afraid and scared, terrified, humbled. They disobey Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in the day, during the day, and at night they cry. They're broken, they're shattered. They have a great deal of regret and remorse. They feel bad about what they have done. And they want to hide their sins, and they want to make tawbah. And they look forward and they expect for a better tomorrow. But at the moment they're weak. At the moment they've lost. But internally, spiritually, mentally, they know that it's wrong. And they know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the only one that can forgive them. And that is their ticket, that's their cause, that's their means to Jannah. Think about these words, brothers and sisters in Islam. You may fast the month of Ramadan and go to the fire of hell. You may miss a day out of the month of Ramadan and go to Jannah. You may fast the 6 days of Shawwal, and you may be from the first to go to Jahannam. And you may not fast the 6 days of Shawwal, and you may be from the first to go to paradise. The Prophet ﷺ, he tells us that the first denizens of the fire, the first inhabitants of Jahannam, they aren't the drunkards, they aren't the whores and the prostitutes, they aren't the murderers and the thieves, they aren't the ignorant idol worshippers and grave worshippers. Rather, they are those who seem to be righteous, those who seem to be pious, those who outwardly look like they're doing the right thing. But Allah knows that internally, on the inside, something is horribly wrong. إِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَعْمَلُ الْحَسَنَةَ فَيَدْخُلُ بِهَا النَّارِ وَإِنَّ الْعَبْدَ لَيَعْمَلُ السَّيِّئَةَ فَيَدْخُلُ بِهَا الْجَنَّةِ يَعْمَلُ الْحَسَنَةَ فَيَعْجَبُ بِهَا وَيَفْتَخِرُ بِهَا فَيَدْخُلُ النَّارِ وَيَعْمَلُ السَّيِّئَةَ فَلَا يَزَالُ خَوْفُهُ مِنْهَا وَتَوْبَةُ مِنْهَا حَتَّى تُدْخِلَهُ الْجَنَّةِ. A servant may perform a good deed and go to the fire, and a servant may perform a bad deed and go to paradise, doing the good deed with pride, with arrogance, with conceit, forgetting about Allah, thinking that Allah Azza wa Jalla owes you something, the people owe you something, and that is your way to Allah's wrath and to Allah's punishment. And a servant does a sin, disobeys Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, isn't the most forthright, but they're scared, they're afraid. They know that Allah Azza wa Jalla is the only one that can guide them, correct them, and rectify them, and they will go to paradise. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to show us the truth and to allow us to follow it. And we ask Allah the Mighty and the Most High to show us the falsehood as falsehood and to allow us to avoid it. Allahumma arina al-haqqa haqqan warzuqna ittiba'ahu. Allahumma arina al-batila batilan warzuqna ijtinabahu. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله تعالى لي ولكم فاستغفروه إنه هو البر التواب. الحمد لله وكفى وصلاة الله وسلامه على عباده الذين اصطفى أما بعد. So this speech that sounds weird and strange, if I do the right thing, it's still a possibility for me to be punished. And if I do the wrong thing, then it's a big possibility for me to be forgiven and rewarded. It may sound strange, but there are many authentic narrations of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ that clearly support this. From them is the Hadith in Bukhari and Muslim, on the authority of Abu Hurairah, speaking about a man who lived a very long time ago. The man was from Bani Israel. And this man had a lot of sons and a lot of children. And it's also obvious and apparent, and Allah surely knows best, is that he was wealthy. And the man was extremely sinful. He lived his life disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in a state of heedlessness and ignorance. And as death approached, as he became sick, as he became ill, as he became old, he lied upon his deathbed. And he summoned all of his sons, he gathered his children, and he asked them, He said to them, Ayu abin kuntu lakum. He says, what type of father was I to you? Was I a good father or a bad father? Was I there for you or not? Of course, his sons, they replied, they said, you were an excellent father. You were the best father. You gave us this, you taught us that, and you provided us with so on and so forth. And he says, فَهَلْ أَنْتُمْ مُطِيعِينَ. He says, will you obey me? Will you listen to me? If I ask for one final request. All of his sons said, of course we will, Father. He says, then when I die, don't bury me. When I die, don't put me in this mausoleum or that place or that place. He says, but cremate my body. Burn me into ashes. And put me in an urn. And take that urn and go to the coast. And make sure you go on a windy day. Open the urn and throw my ashes. Let the winds blow them, dump them into the sea, spread them into the sand. He says, because if Allah, for wallahi in qadar Allahu alayya, if Allah has the ability to punish me, then Allah will punish me like no one else. He didn't say when Allah punishes me, if Allah decides to punish me. He says if Allah can punish me. If Allah has the power and the ability to take my soul and to put wrath upon me. He doubted Allah's qudra. How many times do you read in the Quran, Inna Allah ala kulli shay'in qadir. Allah has omnipotence and power to do all things. Period. So this man, he doubted one of the most fundamental precepts of Al-Islam. Is that Allah Azza wa Jal has the ability to do all things. No limit and no cap on power and his might. And he said, for wallahi la'in qadar Allahu alayhi. If Allah has the ability to punish me, Allah will destroy me. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and of course he knew what this man said, he knew what this man thought, he knew what this man was going to do before he even did it. رَبُّكُمْ أَعْلَمُ بِمَا فِي نُفُوسِكُمْ. Allah knows what's in our hearts and our souls and our minds before we utter the words. So he spoke to the sea, and Allah spoke to the sand, and Allah spoke to the earth, and he said, put this man back together, put him back into a body. And the man stood, he was resurrected in front of Allah Azza wa Jalla. And he said, مَا حَمَلَكَ عَلَنَا صَلَاتًا. What made you do what you did? How foolish was that? How stupid was that? What was wrong with you? What made you say what you said and did what you told your sons to do? The man said to Allah, he said, خَشْيَتُكَ يَا رَبِّ وَأَنْتَ أَعْلَمُ. He says, I was scared. I was afraid. I was scared of you. But you truly know best. Was I sincere in that claim? You know better than I do. And that's the only reason why I told my sons to cremate my body. So how many major sins did the man fall into? The first major sin is that he helped his sons upon disobeying Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The second major sin, which was worse than the major sin, he had doubt about Allah's power, about Allah's rububiyyah, which is a kufr. And thirdly and fourthly and fifthly, and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, he forgave this man. And he allowed this man's soul to go to paradise. Because of his prayer at night? No. His fasting in the daytime? No. His charity? No. But because he was scared and he was terrified. And he knew that he was a wrongdoer. And that was his way to Jannah. And the Prophet ﷺ tells us in another authentic hadith, Jundub ibn Abdullah in Sahih Muslim, and Abu Hurairah in Sunan Abi Dawud, with a more complete version. كان رجلان أخوان من بني إسرائيل. There were two men, also from the previous nations, the Israelites. One man was righteous, he was pious. كان أحدهما عابدا. He was a worshiper all the time, day and night, prayer, fasting, charity, zakat, etc. And the second man was a mudhnib, muqtarif. He was a sinner, he was a wretch. But they had some type of friendship among each other. So whenever the righteous man saw the wretch, whenever he came in the company with the wretch, with the sinner, he would give him nasiha. He would say, opposite, stop. Don't drink today. Don't fornicate today. Don't gamble today. Don't steal today. Don't rob nobody today. Don't be disrespectful to your parents. Not today. Just chill. Stop. And then they would part ways. And he would see him again and again and again. So one day he felt his sinful friend being sinful, disobeying Allah Azza wa Jalla, and he said, stop. Aqsir. Khalas. That's enough. And the sinful man became frustrated. He became irritated. He became angry. And he says, are you my watcher? Is that your sole purpose in life, to breathe down my neck and to see what I am and what I'm not doing, leave me alone. Khalas. That's enough. You've told me enough to stop. You've given me enough advice. And then the righteous man, the knowledgeable man, the one who was pious and had some type of standing with Allah Azza wa Jalla, he became upset. He became frustrated. He became irritated. And then he says something which was utterly disastrous, utterly reckless and irresponsible. He said, Wallahi la yaghfirullahu laka. Wallahi, Allah will never forgive you. Talking like that. You're disobeying Allah. I give you advice. I tell you to stop, and you get mad and you get irritated. Allah will never forgive you with that attitude. So Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, He caused both of the men to die. He took their souls, and they were brought, they were resurrected, they stood in front of Allah, Rabbul Alameen. And Allah asked that question, that rhetorical question, that hypothetical question, that Allah knew the answer to, and that no human being could properly answer. مَنْ ذَا الَّذِي يَتَأَلَّى عَلَيَّ أَلَّا أَغْفِرُ لِفُلَانٍ. He says, who is the servant? Who is the slave that swears, that makes an oath, that swears in my name that I would not forgive so and so a servant? Who is he? Who has that status? Who has the keys to my mercy to say that I will and I will not forgive? When the Prophet ﷺ was sitting in the masjid with the companions, and then no man, Bedouin man, entered the masjid, and he walked in front of the Sahaba, in front of the Messenger of Allah ﷺ, and he said, Allahumma irhamni wa Muhammadan wa la tarham ma'ana ahadan. He said, oh Allah, have mercy on me and Muhammad and nobody else. He entered the masjid. He says, oh Allah, have mercy on me and this man Muhammad and nobody else. The Prophet ﷺ, he said to this no man, he said, he says, no, it doesn't work like that. You can't take something which is so expensive, and then limit it to one or two people. It doesn't work like that. No one has access to my mercy. No one has a monopoly of my mercy. And of course, we know what the Bedouin man did after that. So the Prophet ﷺ, he tells us, is that Allah asked them, who is swearing? Who's making an oath? Who has so much gall and confidence to say that I will not forgive so and so and so and so? And we all know who made this statement. And we all know that the statement was wrong. So Allah Azza wa Jalla, He told the angels, He sent the angels, He commanded the angels. He said, take this sinner, take this wretch, take this disobedient man, and allow him to go and to enjoy Jannah. And as far as the righteous man, the pious man, فَقَدْ أَحْدَبْتُ عَمَلَكَ. He says, your deeds are done. Alas, it's over for you. All of your deeds are null and void. And of course, that man was going to be punished. Abu Hurairah radiallahu ta'ala anhu, he said regarding this narration, وَاللَّهِ لَقَدْ تَكَلَّمَ بِكَلِمَةٍ أَوْبَقَتْ دُنْيَاهُ وَآخِرَتَهُ. He says, I swear by Allah, this man made such a reckless statement that he ruined both of his lives. He ruined his life in this world and in the next. So the point from these two authentic traditions is clear as day. Is that a servant could do a good deed and go to Jahannam. And a servant could do a bad deed and go to Jannah. Which of the two are you? How do you feel after Ramadan? How do you look at people that are less knowledgeable than you? Less fortunate than you? How do you feel about people who are still in the past when it comes to Islamic knowledge? How do you look at them? What's your attitude towards them? When you walk past a sinful person, do you feel sorry for them? Do you feel remorse for them? Do you feel bad for them? You pity them? Or do you look down upon them, spit on them, shame them, curse them, doom them? How do you feel after this month? That I have to work harder? I have to have more consciousness? I have to have a greater level of awareness? Or I can now relax and take my foot off the gas pedal because I fasted all month and Allah now owes me a favor. Know for sure, brothers and sisters in Islam, is that there are signs for which of the two directions in which you're heading. There are signs. There are signs for which of the two paths upon which you embark. As far as those who are on the path of going to Jahannam, thinking that they're going to Jannah, then the first sign is feeling a sense of highness above the people. The scholars of Islam, they would say, is that the lowest parts of the earth hold the most water. The lowest parts of the earth they hold the greatest amounts of water. So the first sign of true knowledge, true fiqh, ilm rasikh, is that a person is humble. And they're never, ever arrogant and conceited. They do not stick their heads into the air. Rather, they don't want to be seen. They don't want to be known. They don't want to be praised. They don't want to be applauded. They don't want to be celebrated. So if you feel that you want to be seen by men and heard by men and recognized by men, you want to be clapped, you want to be applauded, and that is a first red X. That's not a green check. It's that you're on the wrong path. And it's a big possibility that your knowledge will take you to Jahannam while you're there. Your ibadah, your worship. If you feel that the people owe you a favor, if you feel that you deserve some type of money, if you feel that you have a right and a status above the people after Ramadan, know for sure that is a sign that your Ramadan was not blessed. And if you feel the opposite after that long month, I have migraines. You know how tough it is to fast? You know how hard it is not to have your morning coffee, to travel from New York to Philly on an airplane, to speak, to talk, fasting, hungry? After that long month, 70 degrees, 80 degrees, some people they fast 90-degree weather, 10, 12, 14, 16 hours out of the day they fast. And then they say, Alhamdulillah, may Allah accept it from me. I'm grateful that Allah allowed me to sacrifice for His cause. Now I want to fast some more. Now I want to give some more charity. Now I want to be more kind to my family members. I want to give more dawah, etc., etc. So there are signs for those who humble themselves in front of Allah. And then there are signs for those who do not humble themselves in front of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Don't get caught up in outward appearances and images. Do not get stuck on the form and neglect the content. That's the message, brothers and sisters. It looks good, it seems good. The Prophet ﷺ told the companions on the battlefield, this great warrior, this great swordsman, he's going to be punished in the fire of hell. When the companions heard this, some of them, not all of them, they were extremely disturbed. What do you mean he's going to hell, O Messenger of Allah? How can it be? Fighting in your cause is from the greatest acts of worship. The Prophet ﷺ tells us about the status of the martyr. On the day of judgment, his wounds will pour forth blood. The color will be red, the color will be burgundy, it will be blood, but the smell will be of that of fine musk. The Prophet ﷺ tells us about the martyr on the day of judgment, before the day of judgment, is that Allah Azza wa Jalla will say to men, He says, ask, beg me for whatever you want. You want to go back to see your family? Whatever you want, ask me. The martyr will not ask to go back to see his family. The martyr will not go ask to make a hajj. The martyr will say, oh Allah, give me life again. Allow me to fight again in your cause. And allow me to die again in your cause. Paradise being in the shade of swords. There's no doubt about that. And the Prophet ﷺ, yet still, he said on the battlefield to the companions, this man will burn in the fire of hell. Some of the companions had some type of doubt, or they were at least disturbed. And the Prophet ﷺ, he didn't argue with the companions. What I have said will be manifested, will become clear to you. So the companions, they fought the battle. And Allah gave them victory over their enemies. And at the end of the battle, they saw all of the bodies lying on the ground. This one wounded, this one missing this one, that one, and that one. And then they saw the man, the warrior, that the Prophet ﷺ would be in the fire of hell. And they looked at his body, and they saw this wound, and this gash, and this poke, and this missing. He was lying on the battlefield. But then they saw the final cause of death. And that was that the man had impaled himself. He sat upon his sword. He placed his sword in his abdomen, his sternum, and he killed himself. Because he had one wound that he was not patient upon. He committed suicide. And when the companions saw the man had committed suicide, they were shocked. And they were stunned. And they turned to the Messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he said, Ashhadu anni Rasulullah. I bear witness in front of you that I am the Messenger of Allah to you. So don't get caught up on the form, fasting, praying, charity, righteousness, obedience. Don't think that you've made it. Don't give up. Do not become complacent. And worst come to worst, the worst thing of all, worse than being complacent, is becoming conceited. And feeling and thinking that the people owe you something, or Allah owes you something, or you're guaranteed to go to Jannah. So be mindful of this, brothers and sisters in Islam. It is not the time to relax. It's not the time to lose the momentum from the month of Ramadan. Rather, it is the time to make further engagements, to push harder, to be better, to be stronger, and to be more mindful. We ask Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to allow us to understand these words and to implement them. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to make it easy upon our Muslim brothers and sisters in China and in Palestine and the entire world. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to support them and to give them victory, to protect them from their persecutors and oppressors. Allahumma ameen. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to keep us firm upon Islam until we die, to our last drop of blood, to our last breath. We ask Allah Azza wa Jalla to allow the Muslims to be steadfast, to be conscious, and to be in the night ta'ala upright until they meet Him. وسبحان ربك رب العزة عما يصفون وسلام على المرسلين والحمد لله رب العالمين.
الله أكبر الله أكبر الله أكبر أشهد أن لا إله إلا الله أشهد أن محمدا رسول الله حي على الصلاة حي على الفلاح قد قامت الصلاة قد قامت الصلاة الله أكبر لا إله إلا الله